Hey Axis and Allies players, the good captain here. Welcome to turn 2 in my game of Axis and Allies D-Day, played against a human opponent. We start the top of turn 2 with the Allied naval bombardment, which is wildly successful. The Germans have 5 red arrow blockhouses that are relevant left on the board, and the Allies score 5 out of 6 hits, so all of these 5 blockhouses disappear. There they go. They're gone. The fighter layup is as follows. Max fighters St. Lo and max fighters into Caen. The Steelman argument for doing this is that it really does prevent the German player from moving into those zones. And since they're victory city hexes, the concept of operations as the Allied player is if you can babysit your fighters over this, it really is a thou shall not pass to the German player, as these 4 fighters basically have a 51 or 52% chance of destroying any unit that goes in there. Contrary to what low luck would tell you, by the way, 4 fighters at 1 strafing like that is not the same combat power as 1 bomber at 4. So 1 dice rolled at 4 has a better chance of causing a hit than 4 dice at 1. That's just a thing that is true. But that video is going to be on the other channel and coming soon. Anyway, I interpret this as the German player to mean that we're not going in there, and instead we'll make lemonade and take advantage of the fact that the fighters are just in these 2 locations, to the best of our advantage, of course. So the bombers, done a little out of order here again, but no big deal. The bombers are placed in Reims right and Chartres left. Ostensibly, the bomber in Chartres left targeted the AA gun but missed. And since it's sequential, this means the AA gun shoots back, and it also missed. Now, if the bomber had hit, the AA gun does not get to shoot. That's the way this game works. And in Reims, the bomber connects and removes the tank. So that's the way we end up at the end of all of this. So by the time we get to the Allied combat move on turn 2, the Germans are out 5 blockhouses and 1 armor. Okay, for the combat moves in combat are extraordinarily uninteresting in terms of result, but I'll go over it anyway. The Americans are forced to attack in the 82nd Airborne Zone behind Utah Beach, and of course in Utah Beach, right? There's no way around it. But the Utah Beach sector is actually overstacked, so by the time the Americans are done moving here, they hit the 8-piece limit, and so that 9th fellow has to stay out on the water, according to the game rules. So another small benefit to that move prior. Coming up the Americans on Utah, we keep 1 piece out on the water for whatever it's worth. On Omaha Beach, they're also forced into this suicidal attack, those 2 artilleries without reinforcements, good probability of being cleaned out this turn. So I don't feel like any of these 3 is going to be interesting, and as it turns out, none of them will be. Perhaps the most interesting is this British attack east of Caen. So the way that they did this was by pushing all of their assets from Sword Beach the turn prior, 6 infantry and an artillery, that's 7 pieces. They could fit 1 more in, so they bring that armor that survived in off of Juno for a total of 8. Otherwise, the British sort of push east and south, occupy Caen, and set up some reinforcements to come in on the following turn. Okay, so here we go. Combat. First, we'll do the British side. Yeah, so this is fairly stock. Both sides have roughly equal forces. Both sides are expected to inflict 2 casualties. The Allies do pick up their 2 hits, but the Germans miss. So far, not the best turn for the Germans here. But the Germans had a decent turn last time, so no complaints. Okay, now we go to the boring side of the map, and we have this weird situation in Utah that doesn't matter, where the Allies waffle all 8 of their dice. Again, this is not going to matter, and you'll soon see why. The Germans hit on the return fire, and we'll come back to why that doesn't matter momentarily. The 82nd and the Omaha Beach go the way you think they do. All the infantry misses. The American infantry misses in the 82nd zone and is killed off. And the 2 artilleries in the Omaha Beach zone miss their dice and are killed off as well. Okay. All of this fairly expected. Okay. So when we get to the German side of the turn, here's how we look. Now, I'm going to explain why the Americans completely missing in Utah doesn't matter. The only way I could make anything of this is if I committed more pieces to gum up this zone again, and I'm not going to do that. So we're going to just sacrifice this piece. He's going to punch out, and he did his job. Up in Cherbourg, we're going to complete the mission that we had set up of putting 8 pieces together and forming up a garrison in Cherbourg. And that's it. That's all we're going to do up here for the rest of the game. We're just going to leave that alone and not do anything. Over here, it's sort of a fight or flight move. We could go into the Utah Beach zone. We know that 2 more artilleries are coming in, but I think we have done what we need to do here. I don't see any value in pushing into the American reinforcement zone. Instead, we pull back, and we're going to kind of bring these infantries up from Marines. So we'll set up an army here. The alternative to, of course, was to move here. But since we know those Americans are going to clean out Utah Beach, then they can be used to attack that zone on their turn. So we don't want to get nailed by the Americans just yet. So we'll move back here and to give us some options. Still to move north, we could move east, we could move south and link up with more infantry. I think better players play to make options for themselves and less towards a specific strategy. So that's what we're trying to do there. Next, these 3 infantry I think they're just going to stay put. I kind of like where they are. And we're going to have some more AA guns come on this turn, so we'll get a nice supply train going. But I have some pretty interesting plans here for these pieces concerning the Omaha Beach zone. So I'm going to push my pieces and then discuss. So the first thing I'm going to do is move 3 armor here, right here. Yeah. And I'm going to bring back 1 AA gun. So I'm going to have 3 armor and 2 AA guns in this zone right behind Omaha Beach. Omaha Beach is going to be left with 3-3. And the rest of these assets in Chartres will move here. So I'm splitting my armor. And this is to just, again, keep as many options open as I can. I don't think the fighters or bombers will mess around with the units on Omaha or behind it. There's 3 and 2 AA guns respectively, but I wanted to disperse my tanks, so I put some back here with that single AA gun. Tanks, of course, have movement too, so these armors can be used to strike Omaha as well, and that's kind of the baseline strategy. Since I've got fighters over my victory cities, I'm going to try for another turn a sort of abbreviated upfront defense, something I don't really want to keep doing. Probably should be the last turn of doing something like this. But again, we kind of understand the American reinforcements. These next 2 artilleries have to dump into Utah, and this infantry and artillery have to dump into Omaha. So this means that my opponent has to roll a 5 or better to finally be able to put pieces where he wants. So knowing this, we've gone ahead and prepared the ground a little bit at least with our armor and AA guns. Of course, we can always fall back. I think we've got a decent AA gun path so that the fighters and bombers will hopefully leave us alone. So we'll see how this goes. A lot depends on the USA reinforcement role there. And in this area east of Caen, I have to attack with at least these 3 pieces. So the last question is, what are we doing with these 3? And this took me a second to think about. And it is, to me, sort of a 50-50. If you start throwing in German pieces in any battle, it's at some point you got to cut your losses. And there's about a 45% chance the Allies clear this right now. I don't see any value to increase that chance of pinning them another turn in that spot. So I'm just going to go ahead and take the bird in the hand, so to speak, and pull my forces back in keeping with the higher level strategy of preserving forces and waiting towards the end game to make a real serious push or move. So with that out of the way, we have this, actually two really just kind of silly fights that we just got to punch out of. So here we go. The Allies lose one. What was the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Yeah, so that was basically expected, and then we may or may not be wiped out, and we're wiped out. About 50-50 there. Yeah. Okay, so none of this is very interesting. So let's get the reinforcements on for both sides and do the dice report and move on. Okay, and the reinforcement rolls are in. The Allies rolled 7 for the Americans, a par roll, and the British, again, totally waffled that roll. Snake Eyes, that's awful. That's -5 for the British, essentially. And the Germans rolled average roll for Rhine side and +2 for the Rouen side at 9. So we'll go back to the map. Most of the Allied pieces are forced placement, but my opponent, where he could, put all his pieces into Omaha, and then on Juno Beach, the 2 British come in. So for the Germans, on the Rhine side, we have 5 infantry and 2 artillery, also AA guns. So I put 3 infantry and 2 artillery into Rhines, so they'll just move in right now. I placed them on board here so that if my opponent wants to see the history, they can see where, generally speaking, where I was intending to move pieces. It doesn't really matter unless there's fighters along the bottom. Then the remaining 2 infantry from the Rhine side go into Chartres left. From the Rouen side, I put 3 AA guns and 1 armor and 1 infantry into Chartres left. And then I put the remaining pieces into Rouen south. So at the end of the turn, our reinforcements look like this. It's an even spread of AA guns. We have 2, 3, and 2. And then I'm leaving a little bit of space. I have 1 spot here, 1 spot here for further reinforcements. And here I've maxed it out to 8 pieces. So the aggregate dice results for the game this far: -0.83 Allies, -0.33 Germans, a difference of half a kill, so the dice look pretty good. The area that looks really bad is for reinforcements, which is -9 Allies and -1 Germans. So we click done, and that ends round 2. On to round 3. Thanks for watching this. All the best from the good captain, and bye-bye.